Welcome to the Legally Speaking podcast. You are now listening to season 7 of the show. I'm your host, Rob Hanna. This week, I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by the amazing Henry Nelson Case. Henry is a consultant, solicitor, and content creator. Henry is also known on social media as That Corporate Lawyer. On Instagram, Henry has amassed a huge following of over 88,000 and 81,000 over on TikTok. He is passionate about challenging toxic corporate behaviors and focusing on mental well-being in the workplace. Henry's TEDx talk highlights the importance of breaking the silence, why men need to talk about their mental health. Henry is also one of the co-founders of the Creator Space, an exclusive network of the UK's best content creators. So, a very big warm welcome, Henry.
What's up, Rob? I felt like I needed to clap myself, and then it's like...
It's all true. It's all true. All the amazing things you've been getting up to. And that's why I was super excited to have you on the show. And before we get into all the amazing projects and experiences, we do have a customary icebreaker question here on the Legally Speaking podcast, which is on the scale of 1 to 10, 10 being very real, what would you rate the hit TV series Suits in terms of its reality of the law if you've seen it?
I have seen... Well, actually, I stopped after like 2 or 3 seasons because I thought it was quite far-fetched. And so on that note, I'm going to say my answer is probably like 2 out of 10 on the basis that they're lawyers. Well, actually, no, because one of them brought up 0.
It's a 2 to a 0. And I think with that, we'll move swiftly on to talk all about you. So, Henry, would you mind telling our listeners a bit about your background and career journey?
Yeah, sure. So let's go all the way back to pre-law school. So I did my undergraduate degree in law from 2011 to 2014, and probably second year is when I started applying for VAC schemes and training contracts. And I don't know if I'm pretty sure a lot of us at that age, because we'd come straight from school where we were smashing A levels, GCSEs, we were like absolutely killing it. You were used to being like one of the best and always doing well. And then you come into second year and you start applying for training contracts. And then suddenly you're just pitted against the whole country and even people externally. You're like, oh, actually, no. You get a lot of rejections. So then I finished university with my degree, and you know what? I don't have a training contract, but I want to be a lawyer. So I decided to self-fund the LPC on a part-time basis. And whilst doing that, I was also a full-time banking and finance paralegal at Osborne Clarke. I was based in the Bristol office, but worked for the Bristol, Reading and London teams. And then probably about 4 or 5 months in, I then got my training contract offer. Yes, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna be a lawyer. I then just had to complete the LPC, finish up at Osborne Clarke as a paralegal, start the training contract, did the training contract, qualified in 2018. And that's when I was like, oh, I'm a big boy now. I'm an actually qualified lawyer. And obviously it was super, super exciting to have finally have got to where I wanted to get to. And then I spent a couple of years in private practice. A couple of years, just to flag, I've just turned 5 years PQE, and did a couple of years in private practice, then moved to in-house, because I guess when, like a lot of people, or less so now, but when I was looking to become a lawyer, I only kind of knew that you'd either be a solicitor or a barrister. I didn't know there were all these in-house or alternative options, which are incredible options for so many people, myself included, going in-house. And then I've gone from, during my in-house time, actually missed out a key point here before we continue the journey, is sort of late summer 2021 is when I started making content on social media.
Yeah.
And which I'm sure we'll come on to at some point. I guess it's the reason that we met. There's quite a big I do. And then so then I was still in private in-house doing social media stuff. And then about a year later, it basically got to the point where I was juggling what felt like 2 full-time jobs, being an in-house lawyer and also content creation, to the detriment of my relationship with my then girlfriend, my friends, and all of the other social stuff that I was doing, that got pushed to the back burner, which obviously unhealthy, not great, and was on the road to burnout. So I quit my job, turned 30, broke up with aforementioned girlfriend. I don't know, I must have gone through some kind of life crisis at 30. And then I opted to become sort of a consultant solicitor. So I got more flexibility, and I can balance time as being a lawyer because it's something I genuinely enjoy doing, alongside all of the other projects, social media, public speaking, and all of that fun stuff. And then here we are now in 2024.
Exactly. Well, firstly, thanks for being so open. I know it's something you're very passionate about, as well as, people being very honest with their journeys, not just the highs, but also the struggles. But also, you've shown some real grit. And I love the fact that you sort of self-funded the LPC, and then you've gone through these journeys, and you found ultimately what's right for you. You touched on it there, consultant solicitor, but this term might be quite new to some of our listeners. Can you just tell us a bit more about it and types of work that you've been involved with as a consultant solicitor?
Yeah, no, mate, if I'm being completely honest, I always thought consultants were people that were in like their 60s, that wouldn't quite take on full-time retirement, so they just dabbled in all of this other stuff. No, so I'm sure they won't mind me saying their names they've written out.
People know me.
Yeah, that's a joke. I'm a humble king. So I work for Pinson Masons, and they have like a consultancy arm to them. And how that works is they take on consultants from paralegal level all the way up to partner level. And effectively, it's for people that are looking for good quality, top tier, firm level work, also want an added level of flexibility in their day to day life. That could be because they are doing other projects, because they're managing childcare, because perhaps maybe they don't want to fully retire, whatever reason it is. That's what this is sort of geared towards. And through sort of the legal networking community, Rob, that you kind of put together, which super grateful for, I started speaking to people, and various consultancy offerings were out there. And this is how I came across Pinson Mason's version. And then I started speaking with the team. They liked me, I liked them. It worked well. And effectively, because of the other stuff that I do, I generally go on a project to project basis that the firm offer. They say, hey, we've got this project. We think you'd be a good fit. Do you want to do it? It allows me to practice as a lawyer for sort of 3 days a week, giving me the other 2 days to focus on the other projects, all still within the confines of the working week. So I'm not pushing everything to the weekend. If it was Monday to Friday law, social weekends, social evenings, social in terms of content creation, not being social. So I still get my weekends and my evenings to like basically just live a normal life and see people and hang out. So I'm not overstretching myself. But yeah, I can't thank them enough. They're super great. I've been involved in some super amazing projects with some amazing teams, which it's so interesting and like nice to be in an environment that's so supportive, not just me as a lawyer, but also all of the other stuff that I do as well. And sort of my opinion's been sought on why sort of Gen Zs and millennials don't necessarily progress to partnership. What can like the firm do to support that as sort of career dynamics are changing, in terms of routes to qualifying are changing. It's quite nice to know that I can also add value there, which I massively appreciate.
Yeah, and you add value everywhere. And I guess one thing we have to talk about, of course, which you reference, is social media, because you've built huge followings, right? You're in over 80,000 on both Instagram and TikTok, and inevitably going to be hitting hundreds of thousands very, very soon. When you talked about your sort of start of your journey, but what did you to start posting on social media?
That's a great question. I think why I started posting on there was as some kind of outlet. So I mentioned that I joined an in-house organization off the back of leaving sort of private practice. Not at any firms that I've like explicitly referenced here. So I left. I was at this organization, and we've spoken about this like in person. That was possibly one of the worst working environments I've ever been in my entire sort of working life.
Yeah.
And it affected so many other parts of my existence because of how stressful um, that was. And I think to an extent, I was probably quite embarrassed and sort of ashamed to admit how stressful it was and how much of an impact it was having on me. And that obviously was projected onto other people. So looking back now, I realized how difficult like I was to other people that were probably just trying to look out and help me. And I think it was I just it must have been a couple of weeks before the first lockdown in like March 2020 was announced, and I just remember on the Friday like waking up and feeling that exhausted and sort of anxious and unwell that I couldn't physically move and like get out of bed. And I thought, like, I don't think I've ever felt that. I don't even know what the word is, but that kind of low. But
Yeah.
also, like, nobody knows. And it was like, well, I feel like people must have had a gist because of I looked so kind of like gaunt and drained. But also, I'd never said anything because I also kind of felt like I was the problem because everybody else seemed so fine in this organization and otherwise, like my friends at other firms and stuff. So I didn't want to look like the one who couldn't necessarily hack it after just qualified and stuff. And on that Sunday, it was I have two nieces. At the time, I only had one. I think she was two. Who was one of my favorite people in the entire world. And my sister, I asked if I could take her on a walk with my friends. I'd never been allowed to take her out like on her, well, not because she was so tiny, and I was also kind of scared. I was like, I want to do it, so I did it on that Sunday, and we put her reins on. We took her to like the woodlands with 4 or 5 of my mates. I actually have a picture from it over there because that day is like pretty important in terms of after that walk. I was like, this was like a reminder that I needed that actually I don't need to be in that like environment that was making me feel so awful because of seeing like the joy of this child just running and frolicking with dogs and in the water and being with my friends. So I was like, you know what? Thank you, Phoebe, for like help. She did nothing other than be herself. But thank you for helping me make that decision. I'm quitting that job. And I say that with an element of privilege to the extent that I just moved from Cheltenham back to Bristol and was staying with my parents. So my financial commitments were very limited. I'm going to quit my job and this will all sort itself out. And then Boza announced a lockdown. I was like, cheers, mate. Guess I'm not. So I was removed from that like office situation where I had to sit next to that partner every single day. And then I was working from home and I was watching other content creators. I will answer your question. I'm getting to the and I was watching other content creators who have now become like good friends of mine, Rod, Laura, Corporate Natalie, all of these amazing people share their experiences around like working from home and the nuances as we all got to learn it. But I was kind of too nervous to ever do anything, and I didn't think I ever would. And then a year later, I honestly don't know what the exact reason is. Maybe I just was craving some attention that day. Who knows? I'm a middle child. And I downloaded TikTok because I was previously watching content on Instagram Reels. And I just made a video. And interestingly, my handle is that corporate lawyer, but I primarily do commercial work like commercial contracts, data protection, IP, very limited corporate work. But I think I wanted it so detached from my actual identity that it kind of like added an extra layer of like secrecy to it because I was like, I want to do something, but I also don't want people to actually see it. I just want to make something because I like making things. When I was 13, 14 and YouTube just got going, I had my first sort of Mac and I was playing around with like green screens and making videos. They were trash. I have a hidden and they're deleted and gone. I just liked the process, and TikTok had it all built into the app, so it's really easy to get going. I did it, posted it, ran away, and then the first couple of videos like popped off. I wasn't expecting that. My goal was never to like get followers, like do brand deals, do all of this incredible stuff that's come off the back of it. It was I just want to make something, share an experience, um, and just kind of have an outlet to say, oh, like, because sometimes you can't always express yourself in a contract, for example, in your work. So having a safe space to do this was really nice. And then yeah, it kind of escalated, and then I started sharing more about my workplace experiences or things that have happened on like the well-being side and others. And people just started saying like, "That's me. I can relate to this. I've never felt so seen." And all of these comments, I was like, "Whoa, hold on a minute!" Like me, pre-March 2020 lockdown, felt on that Friday morning, felt like I was the only person who'd ever experienced anything like this. And everybody else had their lives together. They knew what they were doing. They could like handle all of this pressure. Uh, Turns out lots of us cannot. So I think that was one of the really nice, well, not nice, but it was comforting to know that people are relating to this because they're going through similar experiences. And I think the more that we talk about these experiences, um, and cast light on them, then ultimately, like the legal profession and wider workplaces need to start sort of making sure that these people are held accountable.
Yeah, and you make so many good points, and I think it's really important that we stress the whole speaking up, because we can be our own harshest critics, and we can go very insular. And actually, by speaking up, like you say, there's other people probably in similar situations where you can come together, and then ultimately you build not only huge followings but communities off the back of that, where you can help, knowledge share, support one another, and of course opportunities and things come from that. So actually, at some of your what might deem your sort of lowest moments, if you can kind of find that courage to speak up, I can guarantee you can find an outlet and safe spaces ultimately, where you can all grow and bounce back together. I want to talk a bit about boundary settings. I know it's something you've really focused on and become very good at, and this is going to help other people, particularly other busy people like you, because you mentioned you're a consultant solicitor, you're a content creator, lawfluencer, love or hate the term. How do you balance your professional life with creating social media content, and any tips for others who might be trying to juggle the same?
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm an expert in boundary setting, that's for sure. But I've definitely learned through managing various different projects that you need to put boundaries in place to make sure that otherwise to make sure that one, you can do those projects effectively, whether that's a legal based project or whether that's something else that you're doing on the side. And ultimately only you can determine what those boundaries are. People aren't going to put those boundaries in for
Yeah.
you. In fact, other people are going to impose on those boundaries and make it harder. They're going to try and push them. So if you don't set in boundaries, then as you may have guessed, you're heading on a one-way path to burnout in all aspects on your life. So with sort of help of going to therapy, I've definitely got better at saying no to things that, whilst I would love to do, I necessarily don't have the time. Um, and again, I still make mistakes on that, and sometimes I take on a bit too much, or I overcommit myself. Like last week, for example, I was traveling all over the shop, and um, I woke up Thursday morning. I was supposed to be getting a train to London. I was like, I can't do that today. I'm exhausted. It'll be more productive for me to reschedule that, like meeting, whatever it was, um, to another time when I know that I can perform my best. Scary to send that message. Don't think I'm going to make it, but I'm glad I did because ultimately I could recover and sort of focus on some other tasks that day. So whether or not it's in your work life, in terms of if you've got a hard stop because you've got an arrangement at 6 p.m. in the evening, 6:30, is making sure that you are quite sort of ruthless with saying this is when I need to be away every Wednesday evening to play five-a-side or whatever that may be, because it's so easy to start giving way to like the fun things in your life, and then when you start losing that, you become so drained with sort of work that you don't necessarily find joy in your work because you're super sort of burnt out. Again, sometimes things will come up, you need to be flexible, but just making sure that you get healthy boundaries. And it's quite scary as a junior lawyer to say to your sort of supervisors, your trainee supervisor, hey, do you mind if I like go at 6:30 or whatever it may be, or do you mind if I come in at 10 because I've got this 8 till 9? But I think as long as you have open and frank conversations, then people will sort of, especially in this post-COVID era, be a lot more like willing to put those in.
Yeah, and it's another great point you mentioned. We mentioned a lot about sort of burnout, but you can't pour from an empty cup. As much as this has been regurgitated time and time again, you do need to put yourself first and prioritize yourself, because you can't help others unless you've sorted yourself. And sometimes, like you say, setting those boundaries or sending that message, as maybe as difficult it may seem, in the long run, it's right for you and it's right for the other individual. Time for a short break from the show.
Are you still relying on spreadsheets to manage your legal matters? There's a better way to work. Our sponsor, Clio, is the cloud-based legal software that will transform the way your law firm operates. They offer legal practice management and client onboarding software that doesn't cost the earth. In fact, from as little as £49 per month, you can cut out all of those tedious admin tasks that you dread doing each week, each month. Automate the boring stuff, free up more time for the important stuff. That's what you get with Clio. Your clients will thank you for it, your bank account will thank you for it, your colleagues will thank you for it, and you can even thank me later for telling you all about it. So head to clio.com/legally speaking to see how Clio can help you. That's CLIO.com/legally speaking. Now back to the show.
I want to talk about your speaking, because you've also grown as a keynote speaker and you've delivered TEDx talks. And I want to talk about your first TEDx talk, because this is Breaking the Silence: Why Men Need to Talk About Their Mental Health. Highlights the importance of men speaking up. So how do societal expectations and gender norms make it difficult for men to seek support when struggling with their mental health?
Yeah, well, firstly, thank you so much for raising the TEDx talk. That was it was the first ever like big public speaking gig that I've ever done, and it was honestly one of the most fun, exciting, yet also terrifying parts of my working life. But yeah, in terms of why men, particularly men, find it more difficult, and why sort of the suicide rates are so high amongst young men, is that there is this element of, as I referenced earlier, that when I felt so sort of isolated, low, and kind of I was struggling, I wasn't necessarily speaking about it. I felt embarrassed. I felt shame. I felt like I was the only person that was going through this. It was only when I started speaking to one of my really good mates, who obviously picked up that what's going on. We just started having these conversations, and slowly I started opening up to them, that we could actually start, I could actually start making sort of changes to kind of combat that, and like going on that walk with my niece and many other sort of things that I then implemented into my life to kind of help me. So I was very fortunate. So many guys don't necessarily have those support groups in place, or will turn to alcohol or social isolation or various other sort of bad pathways to kind of cope, because there's a level of shame. They need to be showing that, oh, everything is fine. I don't need to talk about my feelings. I'm not struggling. I just need to grind a bit harder, and sort of suppress it. And as we all know, when you suppress things, it just manifests itself in different ways. And at some point, you're going to reach boiling point, and it's going to explode. So I think there is that level of men are sort of seen to be alpha males. We want to be seen as these tough guys that don't cry or don't talk about our feelings, which is fun to an extent. But I think when you're sort of mentally struggling, or even struggling in any capacity, to be able to feel comfortable enough to reach out to somebody, which is why we kind of need to make it more of a safe space for guys to open up and talk about how they're feeling, and make it less of a taboo, which is why one of the reasons I partnered with Vember, because that's exactly what those guys are doing. And I'm super proud to be an ambassador with them, to showcase all the amazing work they're doing all year round to support men, sort of a number of mental health and other physical problems that men may go through.
Yeah, and really well said. And again, it's just amazing how you dedicate time to causes that you are passionate about and keen to make a change. And I've seen that since we've started collaborating. Everything that you do comes from an extension of your values and experiences and wanting to make things better. And I guess that leads on to my next question, which we lightly touched on, but want to sort of dig in a little bit more about. Sort of, you've talked about friends, but like mentors, and what role can mentors and leaders, particularly in the legal profession, play in breaking down stereotypes and fostering a culture of more openness and support when it comes to mental health?
Absolutely. I think mentors play a huge role. Say, if I take you, for example, like I look to you as somebody more experienced, more knowledgeable in a sort of similar space as a mentor to an extent, as somebody who's like similar values, we're aligned in that respect. If I had an issue, or if there's something I wanted to run by you, I know that I could comfortably just drop you a message and say, mate, what do you think about this? Or just talk through stuff. So I think it's definitely invaluable to have somebody in your life that you feel comfortable enough to do that. And again, that may not be accessible for everybody, like within their sort of social circles, but a number of organizations offer that level of support, if that's in your workplace or school or wherever that may be, or alternatively, like Movember's there. I'm not sponsored to say any of this stuff. I'm just saying, like, they are a really good, valuable resource for so many guys that may not have somebody to kind of reach out to. And I get so many messages on socials around sort of people offloading, particularly guys offloading sort of their problems, or they want to kind of share something that they're going through. And whilst it's so encouraging to know that these people feel comfortable enough to reach out to me, a complete stranger on the internet, I am not a trained like mental well-being expert. I'm not a professional in that space. So whilst it's great that you've shared that, one that puts, again, this isn't, I don't know how to phrase this correctly, but that puts a level of kind of mental strain on me, because you've offloaded, which is great, but now I'm sat with it, and there's very limited things that I can do other than sort of signpost those individuals to useful resources or spaces that may be of help to them. But I think, to your point, having a mentor or somebody that you can look up to and ask questions without judgment, which I think is the key point, is invaluable.
Yeah, and it absolutely is the key point. You want to feel, it may seem a silly question in your head, or it may seem a silly doubt or a worry or an experience, but having that person that regardless of whatever you may think, there's going to be no judgment at the end of it is crucial. And like Henry says, there are resources out there, communities out there that are prepared to help. So, please don't suffer in silence, like, has been said many, many times before. Let's talk about some more of your work then, Henry, because in the University of Law verdict article titled No Filter, Lawfluencers Can Talk Mental Health and Wellbeing, you share how working in Magic Circle and US law firms can often be over glamorized and reality of the day-to-day working doesn't always align. So what are the common misconceptions about working for high-profile law firms?
I mean, firstly, when you read where you set out the article, like even that still blows my mind that I was featured in the article. Like how that came about, it's
Yeah.
insane. But in terms of law firms being glamorized and the legal profession being glamorized to an extent, I think we can just cast back to the Suits reference, made in how like
Yeah.
a show like Suits, for example, portrays. It's obviously a fictional TV show, but it portrays the legal profession in a certain light. And every date I've been on since like breaking up with my most recent girlfriend, I mean, there haven't been that many. It sounds like there's been loads. There hasn't. They always ask, she's like, oh, is being a lawyer just like being in Suits? I'm like, absolutely not. No. So I think to an extent, social media has a role to play in the glamorizing of the legal profession. But there are so many incredible legal creators that are also sharing the lack of like glamour lifestyle in there. Justin, for example, pushing for sort of diversity and inclusion, and sort of the lack of it at a lot of organizations and what needs to change. So I think that whilst these are incredible firms to work at, you get incredible salaries, incredible experiences, and get to work with some of the best clients. There is a toll to pay for that. It's not, here's X amount of money, here's a great name on your CV, um, have a nice little cushy life. That's not what it's going to be. So I think more and more people are becoming aware with sort of like the lawfluencer community that life at these firms isn't as rainbows and lovey as you may think from watching a show like Suits, which actually is just full of drama and stress. Uh,
Yeah, it's true. You make really good points, and I think there is more information available now where people can hopefully get access to make their own informed decisions. I always think, always do your due diligence. Regardless of whatever you see online, it's super important, and then sort of go with your gut. I want to talk about changes in the profession now, because it's got its faults, the legal profession, that's for sure. But what changes have you seen in the legal industry to better address and prioritize mental well-being? And how much further do we still need to go?
I think we are seeing positive progress. I think the fact that if you take LinkedIn as a platform, for example, so many lawyers are more comfortable sharing sort of experiences, stories. We're seeing more lawyers kind of speak up in terms of their well-being. I did a talk late last summer at Summerfield College in Oxford, and it was with the global leaders in law. When they played like an excerpt, like a clip of my TED talk, and then we did like a little discussion, which again, madness that I got to speak at Oxford Uni, crazy. But the amount of people that, this is quite interesting actually, when the amount of people that had questions to ask after and share their own experiences like blew my mind. But what was more interesting is that people that asked the questions when I was on the stage and there was a forum of people was predominantly women put their hands up. As soon as I got off the stage and I was just like mingling around in like moseying and looking at this amazing like place that I was in, the amount of guys that then came up to me and started sharing like struggles that they've gone through, like balancing being a lawyer and being a dad and burnout and all of these other things, was so like, it was reassuring in a sense that they felt comfortable enough to talk about those experiences. And I think that's where we're seeing the progress. But still, it was quite disheartening in a sense that there was still that level of like bravado that needed to be put on where they couldn't ask the question in front of the whole room. But again, I think we're seeing progress over time. But with an implementation of mental health first aiders and like support, that goes a long way. But I think there's still a lot more to be done. And I think ultimately change comes from the top down. It needs to be more than just a token email on Blue Monday or Mental Health Awareness Day to say, hey, we've got an employees assistance program, or hey, if you're stressed, let's just put you on an occupational health test so we can tick a box and say we've done something for when you're eventually signed off with stress, whatever it may be. We need to see like a top-down approach to sort of workplace well-being. We need to see sort of leaders leading by example and saying like, you don't need to email me after X time, or actually I'm a bit burnt out doing this, and this, so I'm going to take mental health first day because I need to. Because with the juniors and sort of the less qualified end of the profession, we are talking about this stuff already. Heck, we're posting about it on social media, so the conversation is there. We just now need to start seeing the top levels like listen to that and implement appropriate strategies.
Yeah, we need leaders that care. Is probably the way I would see. Genuinely care, and absolutely from top down. But that filters right the way through. Leaders at all levels, and even leaders as yourself. Leading by example. And I think with that, we will eventually see a better, happier, more collaborative, kinder, and certainly something that I'm pushing to legal community. Let's talk more about social media and community, because obviously you're a phenomenal content creator, hugely successful, but you want to sort of help other creators. So you have launched a while back now, but doing successfully well, the creator space with some fellow content creators. Would you mind explaining a little bit more about what the creator space is?
Yeah, so again, life as a content creator was something that was never on my career plan in any respect. And it's something I absolutely love and am forever grateful for all of the opportunities come off the back of it, the amazing people that I've met, the communities that I've got to be a part of, whilst also still kind of, as you mentioned, staying focused on my own values and purpose and what can I actually do with this platform to make positive sort of changes or just talk about things that aren't necessarily being spoken about, or I don't think they're being spoken about enough. So to use that. So it was probably not last summer, the summer before. Again, this blows my mind that I got invited to an event with Samsung to like feature on Piccadilly Circus billboard. Insane. Like my parents love it because they're like, that's our boy. Like, and at that event, I met some amazing people, two of which I just hit it off with straight away, Gabriel Nussbaum and Tanvi Shah. And then a couple of weeks later, maybe we were speaking and we're like, let's all just meet up again. And then we went for brunch somewhere near Hampstead Heath, near where Gabriel lives. And we're just chatting just generally. And we're like, wouldn't it be cool to have like a union for creators or like other places to share and collaborate and talk about our experiences? And we couldn't find something that existed. We were at this brunch for like 2-3 hours. And during that time, we're like, what the heck? Let's make it. So we just come up with this plan. This is what we're doing. Then we'll reach out to some of our creative friends, see what they think. If it's a non-starter, we'll just throw it in the bin and say, lol, at least we tried. So this was less than a year ago. And then since then, we've held like a whole host of creator events in partnership with the Ned, Bally Ballison, Junkyard Golf, with like sort of Alice Living, Danny Williams, Dr. Helena Boshi, having all these amazing conversations around like financial money management as a creator, workplace well-being as a creator, and burnout and sort of the levels of toxicity you can experience with social media. And most recently, we partnered with the ministry to host an event with Ali Abdul, who is one of my favorite YouTubers. When I met him in real life, I was like massively like fangirling inside to celebrate his book launch around productivity. But ultimately, it's a community created by creators for creators, with over 200 members, over sort of 100 million followers collectively, to just kind of share our experiences, to meet up, to hang out, to be social. Because whilst you can have like thousands and thousands, millions of followers and views across social media, for a lot of us, we are creating this content on our own without sort of co-workers or colleagues. So it can be quite isolating. And with so many creators being relatively young, you still want that level of social interaction to kind of get joy and fulfillment and hear what your other creative friends are up to.
Yeah, and I think it's phenomenal what you're doing, and just the huge communities that you've built off the extension of that. And I've been to some of those events, and I have to say they're really rich in content and the people that attend, but they're also fun, right? And I think there's something I'm passionate about in terms of the workplace, is bringing fun to work. It shouldn't just be in your personal life, in your professional life. It's okay to make a living and also have fun on top of everything else, because we spend a lot more of our time professionally working than we do necessarily in our downtime. So I think you do a fantastic job of that and bring this whole community together. Henry, we have covered a significant amount of ground, as I knew we would, from your journey, which has been really, really interesting. As much as, we've known each other, collaborated with each other and done some fun stuff, it's still great to learn more about sort of your journey and all the amazing things you're doing to help so many other people. And I'm sure you would have inspired a lot of our listeners around the world. And if people want to know more, I'm going to give you a chance to shout out all your handles again at the end, but I want to ask one final question, which is, what would be your advice to those interested in a career in law and looking to maybe share their journey on social media?
So first part, if you want to start a career in law, go for it. I absolutely love being a lawyer and all of the sort of experiences, good and bad, because without the bad experiences, I wouldn't have got all of this other stuff off the back of it. But it's a great profession to be in. It's not an easy profession to get into. So just keep that in mind, and also keep in mind that there are so many opportunities within the legal profession more broadly, in terms of like legal tech, alternative routes to qualify, in-house routes, so many other exciting ways to be involved, not necessarily just with the sole practice of being a lawyer. And if you want to make content off the back of it, then absolutely go for it. Just make sure that what you're putting out there is within your sort of realm of expertise. Say, for example, you can't necessarily talk about securing a training contract if you haven't necessarily done that yourself. So just be mindful of what you're putting out there, but enjoy it. It's both of them are super fun in their different respects. And I love both, and I'm super grateful for both. So go for it.
Yeah, and I think it's so true. You know, the old Nike slogan, just do it, right? I think is you know, don't just sort of, you know, pontificate, take action. And if people want to learn more from you, Henry, or more about your career journey, where can they find more about At That Corporate Lawyer, the creator space? Where's the best place for them to go? Shout out any more of your website, social media handles, etc., etc. We'll also make an effort to share them with this episode for you too.
Awesome. Thank you so much. But yeah, if you want to hit me up on like Instagram or TikTok, the @handle, as Rob mentioned, is At That Corporate Lawyer. I'm also on LinkedIn, so feel free to connect, drop me a message. I generally respond to pretty much every DM on Instagram and LinkedIn. Obviously, if they're appropriate, I get a lot of inappropriate ones that I don't respond to. But feel free to hit me up, and happy to have a conversation. And
well, Henry,
is at the creator space.
Yeah, I'd highly recommend people check that out as well. As I say, I've been to some of the events and I know you've got some huge things in the pipeline for the rest of this year and beyond. So highly recommend it. Henry, thank you so much for coming on today. It's been an absolute pleasure hosting you, learning more about your journey, wishing you lots of continued success with your career and future pursuits. But from now, from all of us on the Legally Speaking podcast, over and out. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. If you like the content here, why not check out our world-leading content and collaboration hub, the Legally Speaking Club, over on Discord. Go to our website, www.legallyspeakingpodcast.com, for the link to join our community there. Over and out.